Hey, welcome everybody to this month's review on the Denver Metro real estate market. What are the stats? What is it that we're seeing happening in our real estate market? Joined this month, as I am every month, by the talented, the beautiful Mrs. Brenna Harper with Land Title.
Hello.
Um, so, Tell us a little bit about kind of what's happening in your world before we jump into the stats.
Yeah. Well, for those of you who did not see, a couple weeks ago, my car got stolen. We were trying to sell it, and the guy gave us a counterfeit cashier's check. So it's gone with the wind. But State Farm, I have to give a shout out to them, Randy Bales, who's our State Farm rep. They really came in clutch. They initially told us, with the police report that it could potentially be several weeks because they have to wait for the cops to deem it, gone for good. But they called me in, I think, like 8 or 9 days and said, okay, we're totaling out your car, gave us book for it. And I had the check 24 hours later. So that was really huge for us in a stressful time. And then was able to get my replacement car, which I am finally have and am excited about. So kind of a surreal situation. I guess if you're going to sell your car, take it to a bank and have the bank certify or validate the check or do cash. Would be my suggestion on that, or have it go through a dealership. But that was a different one for us for sure.
Yeah, criminals are getting really good with their technology. So the counterfeit check, even the officer commented, "Hey, looks really good," and a little unfortunate. But the new car is much better than the old car.
It is, yes, and I have heated seats, so I got to use those today. That was the excitement for this morning. So I'll take it.
Yeah, wonderful. As we jump into the stats before we start sharing the screen, want to put a little bit of an asterisk. So normally stats are they come out a little bit later than the first part of the month, and they do that because there's a lag time. Real estate agents have several days that they're allowed to change the status, and sometimes they even go beyond that, believe it or not. So the reason that stats are pulled later is so that there's a very consistent window. So we're jumping in a little early, yet we have some preliminary numbers and some great things to discuss. So do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, so before I share my screen, the biggest number that is affected is solds, because that's the last one to be updated. So the numbers that we're going to share are pretty darn close to what they will be as kind of final numbers. But we have excluded the solds because that's the one that really changes in those, like the first week of the month. So I won't be reporting on that, but I think you'll still get a pretty good picture of kind of the temperature of the market for, and this is August that we're talking about.
Yeah, August is, gosh, we're already into September here, 2020. It feels like this year has flown by and dragged on at the same time. It's hard to believe we just have less than 3 months left of this year.
I know it's been a weird one, to say the least. So
little unique, little different. So let's pop up and start sharing the screen. All right, so screen is shared.
Perfect. So what this is year over year data. So this is August of 2020 versus August of 2019. And I'm going to kind of pop back and forth, so I want to explain these graphs really quick. These graphs are a little bit different than if you've been tuning in every month, what you've seen with our Greater Metro report, but I do like them. So this shows 4 years. So blue being 2017, orange 2018, green 2019, and red for 2020. So the first thing we want to look at is our pendings or under contract. So how many homes went under contract in August is 7,200 or just over that, which is up. Or I'm sorry. Yeah. No, this doesn't look.
Yeah.
This is the wrong one. Hold on one second.
You're on July.
I'm on July.
We'll pull that back up. So in the meantime, while you're pulling that up, let's I'll just touch on, we can have a good indication as to what the solds actually were officially for the month of August, given the number of properties that went under contract. So as we take a look at that number, we'll have a pretty good idea as to what that looked like. So with the graph that you were just sharing, those were July numbers as far as under contracts. You could see how high that red line was, indicating that we're going to have another high month of closings here for what it was for August.
I knew, I was looking at my numbers. I'm like, this is not...
Wasn't what you remember.
Sorry about that. Okay.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. It's first to know August 2020.
Perfect. This is what we want. Okay. So like I was saying, pendings are up to 7,500. So if we jump down here, you can see that it peaks up a little bit. So that is up from July and obviously way up from year over year, with green being last year, and that's kind of hidden here under the blue. So the pending is much higher. Active listings and new listings are both down. So active listings being at 4,800 and new listings at 6,200. So just to clarify that, so active listings are all of the homes that are active in August, which may mean that they've been on the market for 3 months or 4 months or 1 week. But it doesn't just show August. New listings are brand new listings to August. So 6,200 went under contract. We still have 48 as kind of like a base or our inventory. But then if you look back at pending, we're at 7,500. So we're putting more things under contract than are coming on. So that creates a lot of compression in the market, or that extreme seller's market. And we'll go into that a little bit more with pricing here in a minute, but just so that kind of explains it. Interestingly enough, we are down 700 new listings in August compared to July. So if you look here at this second graph, you can see in red, active listings went down in August. And new listings on this third one, they went down as well. So because active listings and new listings are kind of that leading indicator of what's happening, we would kind of anticipate that pendings or under contracts for September would come down, because they're typically about a month behind. But we'll see what happens. So in July, both actives and new listings peaked up a little bit. And so this month we see pendings go up. So what would make sense is if that trend continues. But again, COVID has just thrown a wrench in everything we think we know. So I'm interested to see next month if it does follow that trend. Did you want to interject anything on that part, Matt?
Well, what I like to see, and I love this graph because you look at the pendings over the last 3 years, so before 2020, and how tightly that group was. And 2020 starting on that same line. And then, of course, we have, which you deemed the COVID crater as it dropped for April.
Yep.
And then rebounded very quickly to see that number go up. Now, as we look at the next graph over the active listings, and I get this question often, is when is the best time to sell? When is the best time to buy? You can see from the graph that we have some seasonality in the inventory for our Denver metro real estate market.
Yep.
And it follows kind of that predictable pattern. Inventories are really low in November, December, January, February. March, they start to pick up. In the summer months, we have a lot more inventory. Now, as we're looking at what we have for inventory in August, it's actually declining from May, right? May to
Yeah.
June went down. July or June to July went maybe up a tick, and then we're down again dramatically. So, feeling that pressure in the market on both sides.
Yeah. Yeah, and interestingly enough, new listings is probably, well, is the closest to previous years that we've seen. Um, but we're just so below where a balanced market would be in active inventory that it still feels very extreme on the seller side. And you do see that. So days in MLS, so from the time it goes active to the time it goes under contract is 22 days, which is down 26% year over year. It's down 1 day month over month. So it was 23 in July. But that just kind of shows a temperature as far as how competitive it is. And that's pretty close to in line with what we saw in like 2007, 2018 for this time of year. But there was also a lot more inventory this time. If you look at active inventory in 2019, it's at the top of the graph versus days on market. So if you kind of compare those, that's why it feels so much different, even though the days on market isn't that much different, but it's definitely a different environment than it was this time last year.
Well, and if it gets any shorter, we may have to start measuring this in hours on market instead of
Yeah.
days on market.
Yeah.
A joke, right? But it just does seem to see a lot of things moving very fast. Now, that also means that if the homes aren't going under contract in the 22 days, that there's some indication that something's not happening correctly, right? Maybe it's a slight overprice. Maybe it's a dramatic overprice. There's still sellers that believe, well, hey, we'll start super high. We could always come down, but buyers are paying anything I want for the home. And that's just not the reality, even in this market, right?
Yep. The other interesting one, if we come down here, is month supply of inventory. We're at 1 month for Denver Metro on the whole. And again, what that means is if we didn't put any more homes on the market, how long would what we have last? It would last a month. There are some price points in some areas where it's like 2 weeks. So it's very, very low. And I mean, you can see comparatively over the last 4 years, we're extremely low. The National Association of Realtors says a balanced market would be 6 months of inventory. Here in Colorado, the professionals that look at this stuff all the time have said closer to like 3 months, 3 or 4 months. I've heard anywhere from 2 to 4. So I think 3 is probably a pretty safe assumption there. And we're at, just 1. So we're not close to a balanced market, except for in our luxury market, we would feel more balanced.
Yeah, we're at a little bit longer pace. You can take your time, be a little more picky and discerning when it comes in that luxury market, which is probably not very different. But not a lot happening. The market's still moving very, very fast.
Yep. And then the last thing for this graph that will kind of jump us into the next thing we want to talk about is the percent of closed price to list price. And it's 100.2 is the average. So what that means is what you listed it for initially, and then what you ended up getting for it when it closed. The average is 100.2. So that's extremely high. But you also have to, and we'll talk about the importance of pricing, because I think a lot of people see that number and they're like, oh, the average is 100. Man, like, let's reach for the stars. I think the thing to keep in mind here is that the buyers and the people that are in this real estate market right now are very educated on what's going on, and they know market value. So reaching for the stars might not net you the most amount of money in your pocket. And we'll kind of talk about that. But I mean, obviously anything over 100 is incredible. And it shows a very strong market, but it doesn't just mean you get to pick your price still.
Yeah. Yeah. I may want my house to be worth $600,000. It doesn't mean that I put it on and the market's going to bring that. Buyers are still very, very cognizant of what the pricing is. And it all depends on what else they've seen. And pricing becomes one of those things that's done in context. So to share a story, and Brenna, you may remember this, this is several years ago. I decided I wanted to get back into swimming and doing competition swimming and needed a new swimsuit. So I started looking for competition race swimsuits and deciding, okay, what was I going to get? And I ended up buying a swimsuit. And you asked me several weeks later, made the comment that I spent like $80 on a swimsuit. And it blew my mind. I was like, there's no way that didn't happen. I didn't spend $80. And sure enough, you pull up the Amazon list and that's what I spent. And I went back and it was that what else I had seen had kind of moved my idea of what pricing was, because the context had changed. To get what I wanted, I was going to have to spend a certain amount.
Yep.
Real estate's kind of the same way. If I'm looking at 5 homes today and I've already seen 15 homes, your home may be the best home that I've seen. But if it's also $20,000 over everything else that I've seen, that's going to be impacted. I'm less interested in that home, right? It comes down to context and value. So the best strategy is always to price it within the market, because the market's going to move very quickly to it. And you'll probably end up with more money pricing it in the market than overshooting and starting too high.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that pricing conversation, I want to jump to a new tool that Land Title is providing for our agents. It's called The Importance of Pricing. This is a little header, but I want to show you the data. So what it is, it shows the percentage of original list price received based on days on market. So,
and can you make that a little bit bigger?
Yes.
To put you on the spot for it.
Yes. Is that better?
A little bit, couple more clicks. I think we'll be, yep,
that's
right there.
I think that's good. So what's great about this is we've shown different things like this before, but it's been for the greater metro on the whole. This one breaks it down by county, price range, and property type. Because, as we're talking about greater metro on the whole, that's great. But like we talk about every time, real estate is local. So Jefferson County, Adams County, Arapahoe County, those are all different stories and different strategies potentially. So, just because you have a girlfriend that sold her house in Denver for this price and it was on the market for 3 hours, if you live in Jefferson County, you cannot compare that as apples to apples. So
or if you live across the street, right? It's all very different. So many variables.
Absolutely. So for this example, I have pulled up Denver County, price range of $400 to $499 for a single family, which means it doesn't share any walls, so like not a townhome, not a condo. And then the list price would be at $450. So then it shows you for 0 to 7 days, the average. Oh, what did I just do? The average would be at like just over 100% or $4,000 more than your list price. And then you can see it goes down from there. So Matt, do you want to kind of walk us through this and how you would utilize this for a seller or why this is important data?
Yeah. So if you'll drive kind of here while we're talking, we can get back to. So, plug Brenna was hands deep into this, helping to develop this, because it's an important conversation to have right now on both sides. So when talking to sellers, there's an old concept that, hey, if I start super high, I can always come down, which, hey, that works if I'm selling a car or I'm selling a lawnmower, I can do that. Real estate's just different. The data kind of proves that out. So, what we'll do is we'll say, okay, I'm going to talk to my clients about their property in Denver. So we're going to go to Denver County. So we'll just jump back into where you were. Now they want to list, say at 550.
Let's do the 4 to 499 range. I think it's,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So pricing in that 4 to 499 range. So the 4 to 500 for a detached, and our list price is going to be 450. So just right there in the middle.
Okay.
So the data is telling me that, right, if we've got it priced correctly, we're going to move very, very quickly. In fact, in the first week, we can bank on an additional $6,200 for pricing it correctly. Now, when we move past that, as we get into the second week, the third to fourth weeks, right? You can see what actually happens is we start having price reductions. We start chasing the market down. And it ultimately costs more money in the long term. So, here, if the price in the market, it's telling us, hey, 450 is the right price. If we go up to 460, 465, 470, we're not going to get it under contract quickly, right? What we're going to end up seeing is it may be that 2 to 4 weeks where we start chasing that down.
Yeah. Well, and something I want to point out with this too is everyone is hearing about these multiple offers and bidding wars. Those don't happen when your house has been sitting on the market for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks. They happen the first weekend. 90+% of the time. There's always that outlier, so I'll never say never, but most of the time it's the shiny new toy, right? It's the brand new listing that gets the multiple offers. So if you're trying to push the market and see how it goes and let it sit for a couple weeks, you're probably going to lose out on several $1,000s, maybe more, because once it passes like that 2-week mark, then it feels a little bit stale, and no one is going to say, oh, I want to pay $30,000 or $10,000 above for that. So kind of a shift in that mindset of, sitting and waiting for a good offer is not necessarily the best strategy, according to the data.
Yeah, typically, and what the data proves is what we've known for a while in real estate, yet it's been hard to articulate it with the data. The best offers typically come through first, and they come through in that first week. Now, because of you and land title, we actually have data that kind of backs that up, that says, hey, look, statistically, this shows the best ones are coming first. And to your point on the buy side, this has been great information and incredibly valuable for buyers that we're working with, because we're looking at, look, if you don't want to compete at the same level and do the things that it takes to buy that home that 17 other people are also interested in. So it's paying a lot over, and maybe we're bringing cash if the appraisal doesn't come in to the same level, or we're having to modify our inspection criteria. If you don't want to play in that space, and don't get me wrong, it's okay to not want to play in that space.
Yeah.
We can look at something that's quote unquote maybe been stale on the market, because there might not be anything wrong with the house. There are some homes that are sitting on the market because it's just not a very good house. But ultimately, it's still overpriced. Every home's going to sell at some price. It just depends on how low that's going to go. So if we're looking outside of the box and saying, great, this is a nice home that meets, it's a 9 out of 10 and it matches my criteria, it's just a touch overpriced, I may be able to get it actually purchased under list price, and certainly under original list price if it's gone through a series of reductions.
Yep.
So, let's not have to throw all the money at it. Let's just be strategic in how we compete, so that, right, we walk into something that we feel more comfortable with the terms in which we bought it.
Yep. It's one of those that may feel a little bit uncomfortable for a seller because you're listing your house at 450 instead of 475, and you end up netting or pocketing more. So that can feel a little bit scary, right? Like that, oh, I really wanted this amount. But if you look at the numbers and if you make sure that you're, also it also depends on what the inventory looks like in your neighborhood or on your street, right? Like, Matt's had this happen a few times. Well, you don't want to be the most expensive house in the neighborhood most of the time. If it's pretty close apples to apples, all of that plays a role in it. So there's a lot of things that go into pricing, but as you hear in the news or as you hear just little snippets of conversations of, oh, the market's crazy and bidding wars and la la la, that's all true on some level. But you still have to be smart and strategic if you really want to get the most money. And then on the flip side of that, like Matt said, with the buyers, know what to look for if you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you're going up against 10 or more other people.
Yeah, it's interesting, the market that we're in, the challenges that we have in any market. It's always nice to be able to go back to the data to let the data tell us what is really going on, because I may feel one way about it. The data may tell us something else entirely. And the data is not emotional. We're emotional people, right? Even me, right? Even though I'm a numbers guy, it goes back to, here's the story that this is telling us. And then we have to interpret, okay, why is it telling us that story?
Yep. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here so I can actually see and not just listen.
That's perfect. I took your screen off here a moment ago, so everybody else has just been seeing our faces.
Oh, good. But hopefully that's helpful. Obviously, the tool is for our agents, but I think it's great information for the consumers to have, or people that are looking to buy and sell. Because, like Matt mentioned, buying and selling a home is very emotional. And you want to make sure you're making the right decision and you're not spending too much, or you're not doing this or doing that. It's not something that most people do every day. So for me, it always helps if you have that data, make it feel like a wise, informed decision. And so that's our intention with it. So, reach out to Matt, have those conversations. And that way you can feel not only prepared going in, but feel confident in whatever decision you make.
Well, whatever it is, we want to tell the truth about what the market's doing, and not to just let it be, again, well, we feel maybe that it might be this way, or, we want to come with the real news, because there's always this story. It's like the fisherman, right? The fish that got away was this big. Right? Or in my case, the little fish, not a great fisherman, right? But we want to make sure that we're bringing the evidence and bringing reality to whatever is there. So that's the reason we come with the stats every month, is so that we get the real story out to the people and they can make a decision based on fact and not based in fear around what could be, right?
Yep.
So now, as we wrap up, and have any parting words of wisdom for us, B?
I think, and we'll touch more on this maybe next month, but as we approach election season, historically, it has stalled the market a little bit. And it doesn't matter what side, it's just any change kind of makes people pause. So while interest rates are so low, if you are a buyer, it might be a great time to have that conversation. If there's less people, out looking, do you have less competition? Is this a great time to buy? So I wouldn't necessarily be afraid of election season. I would just try to utilize it based on your situation, and maybe have that conversation of, okay, does this make sense for us? Instead of just saying, okay, we'll wait and see with everyone else that's waiting and seeing. And then you put yourself in a position where you're going to be in a higher demand.
Yeah, and I saw this 4 years ago from a number of real estate agents that I know, right, on their social media, and would jokingly reiterate this: if your party loses the election and you want to move to Canada, let me know, because I can help sell your house, right?
Yep.
Well, again, Brenna, thank you so much. I appreciate you joining on this every month. It's always great to have the numbers, so thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All
Good
right,
to be here.
everyone. Thanks again for tuning in. Again, let us know if there's information or stories that you want to hear. We've got a great lineup coming here for the next several weeks with some great relevant conversations. So, as always, if there's anything that you need from us, don't hesitate to reach out. Let us know, how we can be a resource for you.
Enjoy the snow.